So now that Justice Raymond Zondo has been appointed as the Chief Justice, questions are being raised about the significance, really, of the JSC recommendation process and whether the President simply ignored the JSC. The Commission itself, you might remember, recommended that Judge Mandisa Maya, who would have been the first woman Chief Justice of South Africa, be appointed. So let's unpack this leg of the story for you now. Bring in former Constitutional Court Judge Albie Sachs, who's with us now via our video link. And Justice, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for making time to chat to us so early on a Friday morning. I mean, we'd always known that the JSC was going to be part of a broader consultation process, and the prerogative ultimately lied with the President. In fact, there had been all kinds of conversations about that during and post those JSC interviews. With that in mind, is it really fair to consider that Ramaphosa simply ignored the JSC?
Well, he didn't simply ignore the JSC at all. And I'm surprised that people don't see what's going on. He has made it easy, comfortable for now President Maya, President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, to ascend to the Constitutional Court to become Chief Justice in 2 stages instead of 1. And it means that she'll come in as Deputy Chief Justice. She'll have about 2 years to serve, getting the feel, developing the collegiality, understanding the inner workings of the court, and then be in a position to become Chief Justice. So this is really a step in line with the recommendations. I must say that many people consider the JSC very naughty in making a recommendation. They weren't asked to do that. But the fact is that in practice, in reality, the President hasn't ignored the recommendation, just said, Maya, if I can call her in a familiar way, you're going to make it, but in 2 stages, not 1. And that will be for your benefit, for the benefit of the Constitutional Court and of the country, that you go to the top court in the land, the apex court, get the experience of working there, the vibes, a sense of the problems, the great problems of the Chief Justice having to be the head of the whole judiciary of the whole country, and in about 2 years' time, then, if you like, the crown will be put on your head.
I can imagine the skeptics among us asking, why go through a 2-step process if ultimately you want Maya to be in the top job? And what underpins that question is, do we really have to go through the process again to get to a point ultimately that the President had supposedly always wanted to begin with? And by this process, I'm referring to the JSC interviews and everything that entails that entire moment.
You know, this is not an award that's being given and being delayed. This is a very serious job. And the practice in the past, from Arthur Chaskalson, when he stepped down, Pius Lange had been on the court. He carried on. When Pius Lange stepped down, Sangile Mhobo, who had been on the court, carried on. Afterwards, many people felt that Dikgang Moseneke should have been the Chief Justice. He wasn't, but Mogoeng had been on the court. You know, it's a very special body, the Constitutional Court. It's not just any other court, but a very special style and way of working. The whole team works in every case, and I think it's actually setting up President Maya for a very successful period, having to wait not very long. You're given that job not as a reward, and not even to make a point about a non-sexist South Africa. You're given the job because you're a damn good judge. You've shown your mettle. You've worked very well in the Supreme Court of Appeal. Now we want you to succeed. We want you to be a great Chief Justice of South Africa, and you will serve alongside now Chief Justice Zondo, and you get the feel, and you'll be in a very strong position then to take over in 2 years' time. So I don't see it as being in conflict at all. I might say many people were very critical of the JSC, not only making recommendation when not called upon or really required to do so, but sometimes very unseemly questioning. And hopefully one result now will be with Chief Justice Zondo presiding and President Maya also being on the JSC, that kind of conduct now will not be something that, in fact, if anything, detracted from the candidature, some of the argumentation that was used in support of her, I don't think was really helpful. And now it's very, very clear. She makes it on merit. She has a woman. It's about time that South Africa had a woman in that position. Excellent. Everybody will be happy about it. Not everybody except the patriarchs will be happy with that. So I think it's a very sensible move, and a move that will actually be very beneficial for Mandisa Maya.
Interesting. You say that, of course, the appointment of the Chief Justice is meant to ensure that the person, the individual at the helm, succeeds. I imagine what underpins that is trying to ensure that the court itself has a fair amount of stability. The concern for people, even those who are vouching for Raymond Zondo, is that he's only got 29 months left before he has to vacate office. That, on the face of it, doesn't bid well for this issue of stability in the court, because, again, we're going to have to go through the appointment process once again, with somebody else having to be at the helm, and that in and of itself may bring about the kind of turbulence that's not needed given where the Constitutional Court currently is.
And now, on the contrary, it provides for stability. Instead of having a new person who hasn't spent a long time on the court and getting to know the ropes and understand the inner workings and developing the collegiality, it's giving her, if you like, a short apprenticeship, not because she's inadequate, but she just hasn't been there, that this is a new scene, a new scenario. And I think I think she'll grasp it with both hands, and I think it provides for stability, because it means the changeover from the current regime, if you like, in the Constitutional Court will be very smooth. Raymond Zondo won't be there for a long, long, long time. She won't have to kick her heels. I don't think she's ambitious in a personal sense at all. I think she's somebody who loves to serve. She wants to serve. She's available to serve. I think she'll be very proud. And all women in South Africa will be proud that one of their sex, their gender, has made it to the top. So I think it will provide for stability. It could have been a little bit unstable. It could have rocked the boat a little bit if somebody parachuted in from outside, took over immediately. And it doesn't mean, by the way, that the whole process has to be done again.
Right.
The president is not obliged to have this process. And he could say in 2 years' time or 29 months' time that we've seen the candidates, she's proved her mettle, I'm now going to consult with all the parties, I'll send it back to the JSC to see if there's anything more they want to add, but we're not going to have 4 people or 3 people or whatever it might be.
Very quickly, Justice, to extrapolate your logic then, would you suggest that having a Mogoeng, for instance, being parachuted, for lack of a better term, from outside the Constitutional Court straight to being the chief of the judiciary, do you think that move, ironically, didn't bode well for stability?
No, he wasn't from outside the court. He was on the court.
Right.
But he was a relatively junior judge on the court, but he'd been there. He'd seen it. He'd seen how it worked. And I must say, he seized those reins, and many people who've been critical of him were pleasantly surprised. And in one judgment in particular, the well-known Nkandla case, he gave one of the great judgments, I would say, of the century. Very difficult issue. He was there as a leader, speaking out loudly and judicially and strongly. But the fact is that he had been on the court for a couple of years before he was appointed. He knew the inner workings.
Fair enough. Thanks very much indeed for your take. Really do appreciate it. Of course, there are plenty moving parts, and we'll appreciate the perspective from whence it comes. Former Constitutional Court Justice Albie Sachs joining us there via video link. Once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.